today's video we entitled "The Things You Need to Know to Be a Developer." So,
and
what do you
this
need?
comes from Twitter, and like a lot of tech personalities in Twitter will put these lists together. You'll see a thread, you know, things you need to know, a thread, you know, and they got a little thread icon.
I've seen them on LinkedIn too. I've seen these posts on LinkedIn as well. Yep.
Yeah. Here's what I want you to think about. Like most of the people that are doing what we do in our space, this Twitter is about engagement more than anything. So they're putting together a list they've seen somewhere else, and they just put together and make an engagement. Yeah. Some people aren't really knowledgeable in the space, and they still put the list together. They just know that the list,
the list is what
engagement, but the person writing the list has no idea.
Yeah.
You know, so like when you look at these lists, take them with a grain of salt. You know, and of course, listen to our list over everyone else.
Well, here's the difference, though. Here's what I've seen on some of these other things.
We do have a difference, yeah.
Here's what I've seen on some of these other things, too. You actually you have the experience in this. I've seen, like, I wouldn't hire, I've seen these messages, I wouldn't hire somebody unless they have these skills. And I look at their LinkedIn profile, I'm like, dude, you've never hired anybody in your life. You've been in this thing for, like, 2 minutes, and what are you talking about? You've never hired anybody. Like, you don't have the the background to be able to say that. It's because somebody else has said it. You can't.
And you've never really took a candidate either and take someone with their resume and their portfolio and go talk to an employer and go, can you hire this person? And then get the feedback from them that says no because of A, B, and C, or yes, I would like to because of A, B, and C. So that I have to say that for the most part, there are some guys out there that do a really good job. Where I think we're one of them, but you know, our advice is built on like we actually try to find people jobs, and we're seeing the market. You know, we experience the market. We're not just like, ooh, such and such got 10,000 likes on that. Let me carbon copy that list and stick it out on social media so I can get 10,000 likes. That's not what this is about. So let's look at what the society says that we need to know to be a developer.
Right. So
the people making these lists.
So I wrote down
fit on a piece of paper.
Man, I looked up some of these things and like I wrote them down. Right. So here's some of the things. I'm just gonna like rattle them off. These are from like posts and things on LinkedIn that I saw. So here's the things that you need. You need Bootstrap, Tailwind, TypeScript, React, Vue, Angular, Node, Dino, C#, Java, CoffeeScript, Rust, Assembly, Docker, Python, PHP, Ruby, Django, ASP.NET. Materialize, Ember, you gotta have the Figma, you gotta have that. If you can't mock something up, you're useless. You gotta have Jira, you've got to understand SAS, you gotta know jQuery because you're working on old technologies too, right? And then you gotta know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Git, VS Code, Visual Studio, Sublime Text, and every other IDE on the planet.
Right, exactly.
And we've literally seen lists that have this thing, and they have like 10 of these things in sometimes, or 20 of them in.
Yeah.
And it's like,
right.
That's a lot of technology.
It's a lot. And so what we see that translate into, we see people like you that are watching this right now. Most of you are saying, I'd like to break into tech or in the process of breaking into tech. Maybe you're on your first job or you're still trying to get that first job. And you'll see someone that's super famous in tech Twitter tweet about X framework. Yeah. And suddenly you're like, man, I've been studying Angular for 6 months. I need to
go learn this
I need to switch what I'm doing. And all you do is delay your entry because you're learning it. We've talked to people that say, I'm learning 9 languages. That's what I'm doing right now. And
and that's not an exaggeration. That is the exact truth. We've heard that from many people. I don't know why 9's the magic number. 9 sticks with us because I think we've heard that at least twice from 2 different people.
Right. And I don't know how many times that I'll do it on YouTube or I do it on thing, or someone will watch the One Coding Project video and we'll get the same comment over and over again. You recommend C#. I only know insert your framework. It's been all of them, Python, JavaScript, whatever. Can I build this with JavaScript? Like, or do I need to just abandon what I'm doing and learn C#? And we keep telling them like, don't abandon what you're doing. Like, we told you a way to do this. There are multiple ways. So don't like increase your entry level by like picking up the flavor of the month. And here's finally what I'll say about this list too, is like, if the framework's new, like Dino, which you don't need to learn.
Apparently every 5 minutes. You called one out the other day. It was like fresh.js.
Fresh.
Never heard of it until you mentioned it, but apparently it's like it's out there and it is literally fresh. So so hey, if you're a web dev, would you learn Fresh at this point? Like, is it
you're interested? I'm not. I mean, like, it just happened to like appear my feed for some reason, You know, and I like looked at it, you know, it's not even ready for, it's like alpha. They literally say on the website, don't use it on a production site. It's just for learning only. And so like, if you're out there and you're 1 year into the industry or less, you don't even need to go to the fresh web page. There's nothing to even really know there. Like, it's not going to be in demand if it ever becomes in demand. So here's the thing that you need to learn. You need to learn what's mainstream, marketable today.
Right.
Not 5 years from now, not 10 years from now. You need to learn what's in production today. Now, a lot of times we try to predict the future a little bit, but even though we're high on Blazor, we've never said Blazor needs to be the only thing you need to know right now. Absolutely not. You need to learn some other things before that, because Blazor is something future. Now, we're seeing great strides in that, and that's kind of cool. And if you already know a bunch of stuff, yeah, look at Blazor. If you need to know one thing, Blazor's not it right now.
Yeah, I think there's this like, so what you hear from a lot of developers is you're constantly learning, right? So, and we agree with that. You are constantly learning. But we're talking about over a 25, 30-year time frame, you're constantly learning. Right. So you're going to learn a lot of things over that time. What that doesn't mean is when you're breaking in, you shouldn't be constantly learning everything.
Right.
I think there's this there's this weird like, well, this guy told me I needed to learn like this stuff. Like, hold on. He's 10 years in. He should be learning that new technology. He needs to learn it. You don't. You need to.
Yeah, there was a famous LinkedIn thread that I got on. I think the guy did it for engagement, but you know, he said 39 years of experience, I think, building blah, 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 blah. Here's the things that you need to know. And it was just like this most like gatekeeper list ever. He said, first, you need to be a polyglot. You need to know no less than 8 things. And then you need to learn 2 things that are completely useless. They'll never be used, but you should learn them anyway. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about?
And you literally call it out that way.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, why would I learn something that I'm never going to use ever and no one else uses? It doesn't.
Pure academia.
No value.
It's
because
it makes you smarter somehow. I don't know.
So anyway, so we've got a list that we put together that we think the starter list. Let's call it the starter pack.
Yeah. You know? There's the starter bare minimum, and I've listed 5 things. What have I listed? No, 6 things on this. No, 5. I've got 5 on here. HTML, CSS. Yep. JavaScript.
Yep.
Are your 3 kind of languages, if you want to call them that?
Yes. Yeah. Those 3.
Git.
Yes.
And an IDE, and we recommend VS Code.
VS Code,
so whatever you want to call it, but VS Code.
Yeah. You can use the one that you like if you want to use Atom or Sublime, you can.
I heard they stopped support for Atom or something. Did you see that?
Probably have. I mean, like VS Code, they need to like recognize that it's going to. And VS Code is really, really cool. But if you like something else, that's fine. But you're going to find out that if you go to a workplace, that's probably what they're using. There could be some other IDs out there they use.
Yeah. You need to use some kind of a text editor that isn't Notepad, right?
Yeah.
So, because you could do it in Notepad, right? So you don't need to know that, but you do really need to know that because the tools and things that come along with it make it so much easier. You don't. I've seen people write code in Notepad. I'm like, what are you doing? You're just wasting your time. You got to do this. You got to do a whole bunch of extra work. And like, just insane.
My son went to a college, and then he was taking computer science from the college, and then the instructor said, you know, IDs are a crutch. You should have to do it in Notepad. And that's how they did HTML classes in Notepad. Wow. And he says, what should I do? And I'm like, well, here, do your work in VS Code and transfer it to Notepad.
Paste it into Notepad, exactly.
I mean, like, but like, I mean, line numbers are really cool. I mean, like, you know, like, I mean, I know it's a crutch, but like, you know, I would love to have a line number, you know, telesense, you know, that would be awesome, you know, like.
Yeah, we're at a point where you need to get to use one. You just did. It's stupid not to. It just is.
It's dumb. I mean, you know, just, you know, so they had to turn them in text files. I mean, it was just the craziest thing ever.
Yeah, that's
so HTML, I mean, we think, and our advice around here is web development.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So is there desktop development, mobile development? Those are different things than this. So like, if you're going into desktop, you don't need to learn HTML. I mean, you know, and if you're going into mobile, you don't need to learn HTML. You need to learn a different set. So today, let's talk about web because it's still the most in-demand job out there by far. You know, like, you know, you don't need to learn about Web3 or blockchain or anything like that either, because that is a really future-based technology. We talked a lot about that this morning, where in our pre-meeting, like, is it going to take off? I don't know. I mean, like,
we still don't know even at this point, do we? We're still like, I'm still like hedging my bets on it, especially with obviously what's going on now. I mean, I know the overall market is kind of like crashing, and crypto being just part of that overall like economy, right? So yeah, it's going down, but it's like took a crazy hit.
Right. And so for Twitter, you go through and you see Web3 and DApp, and you see all of these blockchain tech tweets about this. This is, you need to know this like right now. And I'm like, I mean, until you write a web app that's built on blockchain and you see things like gas fees and transaction fees, and like, is this ever going to be used? I mean, like, we were talking about this when we sold our NFT. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people gave us a lot of grief for building Mr. Taco Cat, and then someone bought it, and we're not making fun of the person that bought it. We wanted to understand, like, what about this is important. You know, we knew NFTs are do not have intrinsic value. We knew that. Like, it's not a brick of gold. It's, you know, but that's not why we did it. We wanted to understand the larger thing of, like, until you read about stuff, until you do stuff, you really don't know how something really works. So like, you know, we just went there. And I think we'll make a video about that one day of like how this really works, and like, what did we learn? And it really opened my eyes up to not NFTs, but to like using blockchain in a transactional type software as a service system.
Yeah. It
seems to be not a good idea.
Yeah, there's something weird there.
You know, like,
because like it is weird. Like, I ran we're talking about this morning. I ran like an experiment outside of us selling one. I wanted to like buy an NFT to see what the other side of the experience was like. So I'm like, I'm gonna go find like a super cheap NFT. So I'm like, okay, so I go find one, and I'm like, oh, this one's interesting. And it was like $7. I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna spend $7, and I'm gonna figure out how the wallet works, and I'm gonna figure out the technology side of it. And I transferred funds into it because I have another account, and I sorted the wallet out and did all that. And from a transactional perspective, it was interesting. Like, the technology was cool. Like the wallet transactional, that kind of stuff was kind of cool. But then I go to buy the thing, and it's like the fee for a $7 NFT or $8 NFT was like almost $40. I was like,
right. And that's in a depressed
transaction
Ethereum market.
Like $40. I was like, that's insane. Like, that's craziness. And then just for education, I tried again this morning, and it was $20. It was literally half the price. We're talking days apart. So it's like the fluctuation in that, the volatility of that fee is just, no business can shape themselves on that.
Right. And, you know, so like, let's say that so like, I thought about it at one point, saying, you know, it'd be really cool was if you graduated Coder Foundry and you got an NFT with your certificate in it. You know, you graduated and you got an NFT certificate. But then I realized, like, okay, we're graduating, you know, say 20, 25 people. It's $50 or $100 to mint each one of those. It's like, that's crazy, you know, like, you know, so like, I just don't know.
For what purpose? What's
what purpose? Like, I could still guarantee the certificate in a SQL database, and you have to come to my website to look it up. I could expose it as an API, and you can integrate it wherever you want. The transaction fee is $0.
Right.
You know, like, other than
transaction
space
fees are insane.
I
don't quite understand them yet, which is why I think you put out a tweet earlier. Like, it'd be great to talk to somebody about how those transaction fees work. I don't know what they pay for. I don't know where they go. I don't know enough about it to be able to have a good educated like opinion of, is it kind of scammy, or is it like, it feels a bit scammy to me.
Right. So all this to say, dude, the things that you need to know, that's not the thing you need to know right now, because I don't think the jobs are going to be there in the multitude that web dev is. If you look at mobile, it's definitely a subset of all the jobs out there. If you look at desktop, it's definitely a subset of all things out there. Data science is the other one that is probably pretty big. It's a different tooling, different tool set, different everything. So we're going to talk about web development. And so HTML, JavaScript, and CSS is the primary things that you need to know. And you can know those in their vanilla flavors.
Right.
You know?
Right. And that's what we're talking about. Yeah. We're not talking about frameworks at this point or anything crazy like that. Yeah. The other thing that we had in the list then was Git as well for version control.
I think that if you go to a shop, they're all going to be using Git. Yep. Now, I responded to a tweet this morning, like, you know, someone said, here's the 8 or 9 Git commands that you need to know. And I'm like, just install GitHub for desktop. Like,
they're like nice to know.
Yeah, I think they're nice to know. Like, how many minutes per day is a senior developer using Git commands? And I bet you it's in, and that's why I've expressed it in minutes. It's in minutes per day.
In minutes, yeah.
But if you listen to Tech Twitter, they're like, man, you should know 45 different Git commands. You know, these are the ones that you need to know. Like, or
save yourself
you could use
35 seconds.
Yeah, or you could use something like GitHub or Desktop, or like Git is integrated into VS Code, is integrated into Visual Studio. I'm sure other IDEs have it integrated as well. There's no reason necessarily at this stage to know all those Git commands. And I think that causes people problems in the industry because they can't memorize these things. They're trying to memorize them. Yeah. And the CLI, first time looking at it, it's cryptic. Like you're writing in these cryptic things. Like
it's definitely.
You know, because there's a lot of shorthand and a couple characters here and there, and you're like, I don't know what that means.
Yep.
You know,
it's hard to try and teach somebody Git because there's nothing to abstract it to. You can't say like, oh, Git, that's just like this, because it's not just like saving a file on your computer. You can't liken it to that because it's not that. It's very different than that. It's way more complex than that. So it's like it's a whole new kind of way of thinking you have to learn, as well as the technology that backs it up.
Yeah,
it's confusing.
Now I'm not saying that GitHub for Desktop does every single scenario that could be found under Git. It probably doesn't, and there's some things that you'd have to go to the command line for. But that's like the advanced version. Like if you just want to know how to like clone a repo, I mean, you can do it straight from Visual Studio. You can do it straight from the website. You can do it straight from GitHub for Desktop. Do you want to like merge a branch and do a pull request? You can do it straight from GitHub for Desktop. And it's very easy to do those things. And that's the way we teach it in here at Foundry. We use a combination between VS Code Visual Studio tooling and also GitHub for Desktop tooling for merging a branch, because we think it's a little bit easier for the first time learner there. So do we get any comments? And somebody think I'm crazy or like, you know?
No.
I don't have my monitor here today, so I can't see comments.
No. Troy says the thing is, when you get hired, they expect you to know all of these.
Yeah, they're going to test you. There's going to be a test on your first day.
Well, that's the thing too. It's like, do they though? I mean, do they just expect you to be able to use it? Do they care how you use it?
It could be. It could be in some environments. It could be that's the way it is. But I could tell you could install GitHub for Desktop or use the tooling built in and probably get away with all of the stuff. You know, I mean, and do it, you know, or you can look up the Git commands at that point in time to figure out like, what are we doing? How do we do it?
Yeah, because you kind of know already what they kind of are. You're just looking up the syntax, right? You understand what a pull request is. You understand like what a merge is. You understand the ideas, and that way the commands then become easier. Trying to learn the commands and then abstract what it's actually doing is it's difficult to do. You're learning the syntax and the sort of that way of thinking is kind of two at the same time. It's kind of difficult.
That's the way we do it. Is we show a dev branch and we say, hey, all right, look at your folder over here. It's got the main branch in it, and then we click down the dev branch inside of desktop, GitHub for Desktop, and they can watch it change the folders over there. That's what Git does. It changes the code. It changes all the files. It actually just downloads a new copy and overwrites what's there, and you change it back, you know, and then you can do a pull request, a one-step pull request, really easy. So I think that, but Git is necessary to know in some form or fashion, at least pushing, committing, pulling, those types of very basics. You don't have to know everything there is about Git. So, you know, and then, as Troy said, you know, what happens if you go to, and they're using something like SVN or Tortoise or something.
Right,
you know, like,
then just another learning curve. You got to learn something else.
No, I think the new people are using, that's why they teach Git for some reason. There's no reason. I'm not saying you can't use the command line. I'm saying for the first time learner, it looks cryptic. I can promise you, I've taught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students. And they're like, I could tell you right away when you open up the command line and say, type this in, you know, and they're like, they type it wrong and it doesn't work. And then we're troubleshooting like, you know, the command line and all that kind of stuff. And so we're like, dude, let's just use the tooling. It's a lot easier.
Exactly. Use this application. It kind of makes more sense, at least initially. And again, once you've got the terminology down, the command line part will come easier because then you kind of understand what the command line's doing. Yeah.
So then you can Google, how do I do a pull request from Git command line, you know, and then you'll go find the commands that you need. So.
And Somber Dreamer says, I find choosing frameworks and stacks very confusing. And yeah, that's kind of...
Yes,
it is.
It is.
It is.
And you don't need to learn them all. You're not wrong. Okay, so let's talk about frameworks and stacks. So let's say we've got our CSS, got our HTML, JS, and you're probably thinking, okay, can I get a job with that? Yes, you can, but it's going to be a different kind of job. So you may have a front end only job, things like that. I do believe if that's your primary skill set, CMS, CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, you need to be heavy on the CSS, HTML side, where you can really lay out pages, because you're going to be pushed more into a designer type front end, lay out the page role. Okay. And if you're not structured that way, we've got to move to full stack and back end. And so the step 2 of this is you need to learn a server side language for full stack development. So like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then you need a server side language is our 4th thing. The 5th thing to round it all out is how do I access a database? And I think you should learn Transact SQL at this point, which is relational DB, when we're wheeling it down. So we don't need to know document databases or non-SQL databases and SQL. Let's just go SQL, because that's primarily what people are still using today. Now, you may find a shop that is using a non-SQL database, okay? But there's more people that understand relational DBs like SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, Oracle. Those are the relational DBs than there are in the non-relational. Doesn't mean it's not used. I'm just telling you, if you want to break in, we've got to limit the things that we need to know and become good at that one thing. And if you can, more chances to get a job. And then you add these other kind of technologies to it and increase your learning as you go. So
right.
It's server-side languages, obviously C#. That's what we teach. Obviously, it's probably one of the better known ones. There's also Go. There's also things like Java. There's other things out there that you can write server-side processing with. But we think C# is the best choice now to break into development. And that comes from us trying to get candidates jobs, companies calling us and saying, hey, what do you want? You know, you're one of the few .NET bootcamps in the world. We can't believe that more people don't teach .NET. You know, like that's what I get. I get the comment from companies all the time. How come you guys are practically the only ones that do this?
Yeah. Like, I don't know.
You know, it's because, and this is my new saying, we do what's necessary, which puts our bar way up here, and not what's easy. So the easy thing is, hey, let's just teach vanilla JS and HTML and CSS, and let's do some front end things, and turn you loose and say, now you go get that job. Good luck on that, you know, and then don't help anyway. And that to me doesn't always translate into employment.
Right.
What translates into employment is being able to code a full stack web application with a modern framework and a modern back-end language like C#. You know, could we teach Java? Yes. Would we have similar results? Probably. But we feel like there's more opportunity for C#, and that's why we pick it.
Yep.
So the framework we pick is ASP.NET. That's what we pick.
And
we picked one.
And with that said then too, do I need to know C#, ASP.NET, and is it then worth picking up Java, PHP, and all these other things at the same time?
No.
I think that's the problem we see a lot of people run into, isn't it?
So that's why you understand, like, here's the frameworks, and you feel like you have to learn them all because, you know, Tech Guy 101 on Twitter said, I'm using Laravel, and Laravel made my startup $100 million last year.
Here's my Lambo.
This is why Laravel said that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was literally what,
it was. I saw the Lambo,
And I think those guys were doing it in jest, but I think it was more towards the mark of PHP is not dead and PHP can make you a job. And that's
which is
100% true. It's 100% true. And if you want to go down the PHP route, what I would suggest to you is learn PHP and just stay in that market in the beginning. Don't try to learn PHP and everything else. Now, are you going to get a Lambo with PHP? I promise you the guy they're talking about is doing something different.
Yeah.
Like, I promise you.
It's not PHP that gave him the Lambo. It's whatever he's doing that gave the Lambo. The PHP is it's inconsequential.
He could have done whatever he's doing with
anything.
Something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what I found, like, you know, and these are like knowledgeable guys that I respect. I don't want to call them out because I'm not really calling them out. I'm just saying, like, dude, you could do it with whatever else. We don't need to latch onto a framework because PHP gets you paid or PHP got me a Lambo. Therefore, I should do a Lambo. I want a Lambo, therefore I'm going to learn PHP. I don't think that's the case. Learning to code and building websites is the thing.
Yep.
So you as a first-time learner, don't pick 9 different frameworks. And so you just need to focus on one thing, get a job with that, and then branch out. So let's talk about the multiple ways you can build a website. So in ASP.NET, we are building server-side applications, okay? Typically what we call an MPA, which is a multi-page app. That means that code runs on the server. There's a reason that people still do that. Number one concern when you do a server-side application is security. So because all of the requests go to the server, they're validated, and then they return the view to the page. Whereas in JavaScript, all of your code is on the front end, and it's harder to deal with security.
Right.
It's harder to deal with that. Typically, you have to like eventually run something on the server side to do security, even with things like a web API endpoints has to be secured so you can figure out who the user is and do it like that. If all your security exists on the client side, it can be compromised and taken out and or bypassed or those things like that. So you need to run server-side code eventually anyway. There's no true, except for the case of, you know, I'm running my restaurant site and I've just got the menu on there where it's truly
right, where it's just static content.
Yeah. So like, you know, and yes, you can run it, but you know, even processing a form like a contact page requires some kind of server-side input. Now, you could use Netlify's server side. You could write
it's
a
ultimately
PHP
a server
script.
side, right?
Yeah, it's going to run
Whether
on some kind of server side thing that you've got to set up on your own. So eventually, you're going to write server side code. Now, how are the multiple ways that we can do it? We think ASP.NET's the way to do it, or Web API. Okay, those are one and the same, a controller on the back end. You can do it with Java. There's frameworks around there like you know, you could do Spring and Spring MVC, Spring Boot, those kind of things run on the back end. You also can run Node. Node allows you to run JavaScript on the back end. You need to pick one of these of the three I just mentioned. And if you're asking me, pick MVC, ASP.NET MVC. I think that's the way to go. But if you trust, you know, Tech Code Guy 104 on Twitter, and he says run server side with Node, and you believe him, then run it on there. What I'm telling you is don't switch once you've done it.
Right, just stick with it.
Yeah. So, and then you go out and watch the one coding project to get you a job, and I say, hey, build that MVC. And then I get 1,000 comments like, can I build this React? I mean, like the fact that you asked me that tells me you don't even understand like what we're really talking about at that point. And so what I want to do is educate you a little bit and say, the framework doesn't matter in regards to can I build it? Yes, you can build React, Angular, you can build it Laravel, PHP. You can build it with all of those server-side frameworks that run stuff. It doesn't matter how you build it. The problem comes in, is the framework you've chosen, does it have sufficient enough jobs, market adoption for you to break in as a junior? That's where these things get separated. Not the fact that this one's easier, that one's better, or this one's sexier, or this one got me a Lambo.
Right.
It has nothing to do with that. It's about like, is there enough market adoption for you to realistically break in with no experience as a junior? And we've seen that over and over and over again. ASP.NET C# combo allows you to break into that. And that's why we do it.
Yep.
So that's my rant. I mean, so like, what other questions? Ask me some other questions, Kevin.
No, so I was going to ask you, what do you think about adding a front-end framework then? Let's say Tailwind or Bootstrap or like a CSS framework. What do you think about that?
Right. So when we say learn CSS first, we think you need to know, like, now I will say this, at Coder Foundry, we teach Bootstrap.
We do like a Bootstrap first approach, don't we? Which
we
some
do,
people love, some people hate.
Yeah, because when you go to ASP.NET, the templates that are scaffolded out of ASP.NET are in Bootstrap. So you have to know it right away. And so now what I will say is, we go Bootstrap first, and then there's a big course inside of Coder Foundry that's not on the self-paced course yet, where we build a portfolio, and that is like 80% or maybe 50-50. I don't know what that percentage is of Bootstrap. And then there's a ton of CSS in there, and that's where we teach you about like different selectors, you know, pseudo elements. Like there's a lot of things that we do that we augment Bootstrap so that you can learn the complete package. But CSS is something you have to know. Bootstrap is a way to get there. And then when it's still like in using 80% of the sites, I think Tailwind's around 12% adoption, you're going to run into Bootstrap a lot more than you're going to Tailwind. Now, if you talk to Tech Twitter, they would, the way they tweet about it, make you believe that like 99% of the people are using Tailwind. It's massive. I'm not saying it's not growing, but like currently today, right now.
I like the idea of Tailwind. This cool thing that like custom builds, and it's like gives you minimum CSS. It's interesting, but it's like it's not as easy to pick up as Bootstrap. So if you're a learner too, I would say Tailwind has a more complex learning curve than Bootstrap does.
It's different, that's for sure.
Yeah, Bootstrap's easy. I think it's
easier,
very easy.
It's way easier to do, and it gives you things like Flexbox. So we teach that. So because sometimes the grid system inside of Bootstrap isn't sufficient.
Yep.
So you need to augment that with Flex, and they have their own styles and things in around Flex, but you can do Flexboxes if you want. So I think the thing that I need to know about CSS is I need to know how to create a layout of a page, and that can be done using Flexbox or Bootstrap rows and columns. That's what I need to know, and that's where we focus an inordinate amount of time.
You really
trying
can't
to lay out pages. You know, that's we do that a lot. You know,
because you have to. And then, you cannot get past that. There's no way to like circumvent that process, because if you don't do that, you have everything center aligned down the middle of a page and just looks disgustingly bad, because we've seen people do that. And like you can not have it, but then your page looks like it's from '96, right? It's just like it ends up looking bad.
Yeah. There's a lot of tweet storms going on now about should you consider mobile first design, and everyone's saying no. I build desktop, and you know, and then one guy was saying, well, you know, I don't hate mobile first design because you get a column on the mobile and it looks great, and then when I get to my ultra wide, it's a column and it looks bad, and I'm like, well, that's not mobile first design,
right? So like you're misunderstanding.
It morphs from one. It's not saying one design that works across all the other.
Everything,
and then I see people saying like, I make pages for each one. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you making pages? You know,
hold on. They're saying they make separate like pages, separate views depending on the device. Wow. Okay.
And I'm like, what are you doing? And then he only made 3. He only made 2. He made a desktop one and a mobile one. I'm like, I guarantee you, like, it looks like garbage. You know, so what we've learned is, hey, you know what, mobile first design needs to look good on mobile, because 80% of your traffic is coming from mobile. And that's what these people don't understand. Well, I'm building on desktop first. Well, 80% of your traffic is coming from mobile. It needs to look good there first. Then it needs to look good on a tablet in both portrait and landscape mode. So when you flip it, it needs to look good. And those are 2 different breakpoints. It needs to look good on a desktop browser up to a 4K monitor. Then what we do at Foundry is now we're taking into account of like ultra wides, because guess what Kevin has? Kevin has this massive ultra wide on his desk.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll send me something and I'll be like, that looks really weird. It looks bad. Like I'm looking at it and I'm not.
And I had to adjust the portfolio course. I had to adjust the portfolio course. And so we've added another breakpoint in that, and like, what do we do there? Well, it's
like a max width, right? You need a max width so that it doesn't take up the whole screen. Because if you look at a regular like proportion monitor and you like full width, it looks good. And you put it on ultra wide, and it's touching the edges, and it's like, oh, it looks weird. It looks really strange.
Yeah, and it's so weird that mobile and ultra wides end up being very commoner, except that this one's wider over here on the ultra wide, and it's narrower on the mobile. So like, we address all this. I think that's important to know. But if I'm confusing you right now, learn Bootstrap and then mobile first is easy. Trying to do it on your own with raw CSS as a learner, forget about it. Don't worry about it. Just know how to do common layouts with a web page. You don't need to know Figma. You don't need to know any of those other things at this point, which I don't use Figma anyway, man. I mean, like, I've never used it. Like,
but I've seen it. It's a popular thing. It was on my list. It was on my list of things that you need to know. So,
you know, literally today, I'm still pen and paper. I'll draw it out initially, then I'll mock up my initial like layouts, because I'm halfway decent at laying out grids and things like that. So like, then once I get it there, then I'm trying to like go through
what's that other prototyping tool you used before? I don't remember the name of it.
Figma, and then
no, the one that
I've used Balsamic. I use Balsamic to do. That's like a wireframe. It's not even a prototyping tool. It's more like a wireframe. I've used that in the past, but I always felt like for a lot of things, like I could just do it so much faster on paper, and I end up fighting the tool. And you know, Balsamic's used for me is like, if I need to like show a customer what potentially the flow is, then I'm going to spend the hours putting that together and trying to make it all work.
You don't want to show them a scrap piece of paper, do you? Like your napkin with your drawing on it. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Lala's here. Thank you, and thank you for being a channel member too, Lala, and welcome back. We haven't seen you in a minute. It says, would using Bootstrap be looked at as cheating by an employer, or are they using it themselves most likely? We do get that question a lot, don't we?
Yeah, it's like there is no cheating in this.
It feels like cheating though.
It does, but
good.
it's not cheating. Like everyone's using Bootstrap. That's why Twitter made it. You understand that Twitter's behind this. They're the ones that made it. Like they support this. It is used a lot by your employer, and it is a skill in of itself. And people, value that skill. That's why we teach it here. They value being able to use Bootstrap. How to lay out things, and it's not cheating, not at all.
Yeah, definitely not. It's another skill set, like you said.
Yeah.
Ben, and thank you for being here, Ben. We appreciate you hanging out with us as well. Thank you for the tag. I think you tagged me on LinkedIn the other day. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Twitter makes getting a first job seem like you had 100K and you're using all the modern stuff. And then he says, it's like 5% of the jobs, of the 95% use only text like jQuery. It's just,
or web forms, or older stuff. So I agree with Ben here. I think the other thing that you need to think about. So you have let's just talk about JS framework. So we have like Angular, we have React, and then we have Vue, and then there's Laravel. There's some other ones out there that people use, Dino. And people think I've got to know all of those to get a job.
Yeah.
Because they're going to ask me to do all of this when I get to the job. And people don't understand, like, well, no, when you go to the job, the company has already picked one of these. They're like, we're using React. Now, in the rare case that you work at like a multinational company, like a bank or, somewhere big like that, they may have all of those technologies all over the building. They may use them all.
Places. Yeah.
But you're going to be on a team that is a React team or a Dino team or, ASP.NET C# team. And that's what you're going to use on your job. And if you're working at a small company and they're like, if you're working at a small company with 5 employees and they got one app, like, so how's your app constructed? Well, parts of it's in Angular, parts of it's in React, and parts of it in PHP. We couldn't decide on the framework.
Find a new job. Find a new job.
Find a new job.
It's going to be terrible.
Just find a new job. It's going to be terrible. So that's the thing, is that you're going to use one of these technologies pretty much. What I'm saying is, and we call these stacks. And that's why we think the stack matters, is one thing that we use, that the stack actually matters, what you know, because you can align that stack with the employer. So if you've learned ASP.NET C# and you've learned that really well, interview for ASP.NET and C# jobs. The mistake people make is, I know a lot of these things, none of them really well, and then they just shotgun the internet and apply for every web dev role, and their experience and the things they built don't line up with the employer, and it's really hard as a junior to walk over that translation of like, yes, I can learn that, I can do that, and then they'll interview someone else that has matched their stack, and they'll hire that other person better because they feel like they're better, more equipped day one than you are. And I think that's another reason why people lose at the job searches, because you didn't specialize in any one thing. And so like you've got 9 things in it, so I built my to-do list 3 times using Vue, React, and Angular. It's just not, you need to be an expert in one stack and not 9. All right. So any other questions out there?
Let's talk about this real quick. So
yeah.
Which order to show these? Okay, we'll show this one first, but there's a couple points here.
Yeah.
So Matt Guy says, I found you in university and did mostly Java. Talk about using C# to put a bug tracker app to attract employers. Should I solidify in Java a good idea or start learning C#? Because hold on, and here's the follow-up too, by the way. In the UK, Java is more popular in the market than C#. Thoughts?
I don't know. Here's what I want to tell you.
You've answered your own question.
Yes.
Really?
Listen, if you've learned Java and you can build a website with Java, or you can build the bug tracker in Java, go get a job in Java. Now, what you're suffering from is FOMO, which is fear of missing out. Could C# give me more money, better career, better options like that? And let's say the answer to that is yes. Let's say that there's more opportunities for C# than Java. That's 100% true, and we believe it. And you'll make more money over here on the C# job. What should you do? You should stick with Java and get a job. Here's what's more important than what you feel like is a better career path, is that first year of experience is way more important than you spending another 6 months to 9 months to a year learning another language because you feel like it'll give you a better opportunity. So take the lesser opportunity in your mind and build the bug tracker in Java and show it to people and get a Java job. Then, once you're gainfully employed and you still feel like C# gives you more opportunities, that's when you learn C#.
Way easier to pivot, isn't it? Way easier.
Way easier to pivot.
First gig.
Yeah. There is no reason you should spend 4 years at your university, okay, and you did mostly Java, and you're saying that you could build a bug tracker in Java to attract employers. You can do that you should go on yet another learning journey. Now, if you want to come to my boot camp and hang out with us for 12 weeks, we'll teach you C#. You'll probably sail through it. You'll build the bug tracker. It'll seem easy to you. And yeah, you'll get a job at the end of that. But you probably can get a job right now. And the reason you don't get a job won't be because that you know Java. That's not the limiting factor. It's probably because your portfolio doesn't have enough proof of work in it, or you don't answer technical questions really well in the interview. And I'm not saying that you can do that either way. I'm saying that's probably the reason you don't break in versus this is the stack that I have.
People often push back on the stack though, don't they? Be like, well, I learned this and this because I learned the wrong things. Like, no, that's not what, no, you didn't. It's other things. There's other things and you're...
yeah, so you're saying, should I solidify in Java? Yes, that's what you should do.
Yep. That's
a good idea. And that's me coming from, I hope you respect it, I'm a C# coding bootcamp. If I was a pure salesman, I'm saying, you know what you need to do? You need to get to our bootcamp. Starts July 5th.
Right.
You need to learn C# because Java's not going to help you in any way, stretch, or form. That's how people sell this, and I think it's wrong. Now, what we do, the reason we take an opinion is because people are asking us, what should I learn? Because they have no idea what to go. And we have to pick a stack. The worst advice ever is when you're talking to someone who doesn't know and saying, oh, just learn whatever you want. And then they go down this long, winding road of learning 9 things that doesn't equal employment. And I want to get you a job, whether you go to my bootcamp or not. So the best advice is solidify in Java, particularly Spring MVC or Spring Boot. Those are the ones that I think, I'm not an expert in like everything Java, but I'm just telling you that when I look at the marketplace, those are seemingly the ones that people are using a lot, and you can do some more research. And if the UK has more Java jobs, fine. I would say that.
Yeah, I think
plenty of both, probably.
I would say so too, because we spoke to recruiters over there where C# is in a certain market, and we spoke to others where Java is. So it's like you gotta look at your actual. Don't just class it as the UK unless you're willing to move anywhere in the UK. Then that's one thing. But look at your actual market, your small market.
Yeah.
Like look at your actual city that you're close to, that you're near. Maybe it's bigger in London, but it's not big in Manchester or whatever. You gotta. You know, if you're willing to move, great, then you can do whatever. But if you're not, you got to look at what's a little more micro than macro.
But I would think that Java C# is a pretty safe bet to get to work in with. Yeah. Pretty safe bet. I would imagine that the UK market really does mirror what's going on in the US market. I think they're very similar in like what people are doing, what they're using.
Yeah.
I can't see it really changing that much. All right.
You mentioned upcoming bootcamp, so I'm just going to talk about it real quick. We do have a new one coming up on July 5th.
Yeah.
You guys,
July the 5th. So we are interviewing, and I'm interviewing every student that comes in. So if you want to talk to me, apply. So
you can go to Foundry.com. Go to codefoundry.com and apply. It's deadline is, I think, next Friday to apply. So
next Friday.
You mentioned it. I thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah. So July 5th.
I got to do the sales at some point.
Yeah, if you want to come there, go to codefoundry.com. We're still interviewing this week. So excited if you're watching it for the ones that have already got accepted. We can't wait for the next couple of weeks to pass so we can talk to you next month.
Always good on that first day. Always good.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And Ben just wanted to say thanks to you guys for continue to help others change careers. So,
nice. Cool. Yeah, we try.
Let's see. Lala has a question. I felt very lost when it came to JavaScript in the self-paced. Do I power through or stop and focus on JS for a bit? That's kind of common, right? I think for a lot of people, you do HTML, CSS, and it feels like one thing. You get to JavaScript, and it does feel like another. There is a step
so
up.
what I would say is go to the intro parts, and you'll see like some of the things that we did into the JavaScript part of it. We're going to redo as C#. So specifically, mortgage calc could be one of them. I think we do Fizz Buzz and another one, so that can help you. Make sure you build all those projects in there as well. Make sure you built them all.
I think also just understanding that the JavaScript that we teach and that we generally see fits into kind of two camps. It fits into like DOM manipulation type JavaScript, which we do some of, and then there's the programmatics problem solving side of JavaScript, and they are in the same language, but they are different kind of skill sets. A kind of different kind of mindset is required for each one of them, I think. So just try and get around that too. Try and think about, am I manipulating like what's on the page using JavaScript, or am I doing some kind of logic based, like if you're doing the palindrome or something like that, there's like logic involved there. It's like you got to kind of separate those two things in your mind and try and work on one of them. So I know the logic one confuses a lot of people. The syntax for manipulating the DOM is fairly straightforward. It's like it feels more like HTML and CSS. When you get to the problem solving side of stuff, it does feel like a step up when you're using like loops and some things that we kind of take for granted once you've done it a few times, right? But initially to somebody, it's like a new way of thinking about something, and it is kind of confusing, and it is different than anything you've done previously.
And you could go over some of the other projects again, and if you want to, Lala, it's a self-paced course for a reason. You can do it and go back and do something again, start over from scratch, and then build out one or two of the projects, especially ones that confuse the most, maybe Fizz Buzz or Mortgage Calc or whatever it was, and then you can like redo those, and then that'll solidify. I promise you that repetition will help you learn it. Sometimes you need to do things once or twice or 3 times, and that's okay.
Yeah. Be careful. I would say also be careful running off on a tangent and grabbing a JavaScript book. This is what a lot of people want to do. They're like, oh, I don't understand JavaScript, so I'm going to go grab eloquent JavaScript and I'm going to read it, and it's just going to be really, really confusing. It's going to really just throw you for a loop, and it's just going to make it harder. You need to keep with the practical side of things. There's the odd thing you can kind of research, right? Like I would say, like use the internet. Like if it's something you don't understand, like do a little bit of research on that one particular thing. Like just Google it and look it up, and then figure out how that worked and how you've used it, and then how it works overall. Don't go off like reading a book, because it'll just throw you for a loop.
All right. Good luck. Hopefully that'll help.
Let me see. Jason says, can you elaborate what JavaScript is needed / use, vanilla, algorithms, etc.?
So JavaScript in general is for manipulating a web page. So it is the language that runs inside of all browsers. So that's the language of the web, basically. And so when we need to create a web page, we can use HTML and static elements and then show that page. But if that page needs to change at runtime, meaning that I want to like show the name of the person logged in, or I want to show like your account balance and your checking account, that stuff, they're not making an individual web page for each person. They make one web page and then change the values in it, and that requires that you do that through JavaScript. Even if that's server side, eventually at the end of the day, you know, those things get rendered on the back end and presented as a view in the case of the ASP.NET. But in the most cases, a lot of times they're manipulating an HTML element like an input box or a label, and then changing that with JavaScript. So that's what it's used for. That's why it's needed. Now, the people teach algorithms with JavaScript because it's the most common programming language for everybody to know, because it's the language of the web, you know. So can you learn the same algorithms in C# and Java? 100% you can. In fact, you may have to do that in C# if you interview at certain places, because that's what they use, or you may have to use Java because that's what they use. But in general, the reason they use JavaScript on most of these sites is because that's common to most of us as developers. We've seen that before, and it's pretty easy to console log an answer to, you know, that kind of stuff like that. So that's why it's needed. It's necessary because it's the only language that runs in the browser. Now, the new one is obviously WebAssembly, which is something we don't really need to discuss. And this, it's not quite as common, even though WebAssembly is being proposed as a standard. I think maybe that becomes on par with JavaScript, or even replace it in the future, not necessarily in the near future, 1 to 2 years, but maybe over 5 or 10 years. But for right now, learn JavaScript.
There you go. Quick non-planted question, but the vegan answer says,
the vegan.
How do I join your program, and what do I have to have?
We go right here, like
go right there up top. Yeah, which I'll put down the bottom here too. Just go to learn.codefoundry.com, and
Yeah, and that's two choices: self-paced and in person, virtual in person.
And all the details are right there, so you can do on your own time or a virtual class coming up on July 5th. Let's see, a couple more questions here. Troy says, do you guys ever plan on including secrets in your course so folks don't accidentally send their sensitive data? Who does that, Troy? Come on. To GitHub. I took a separate course for that. It happens a lot.
We do it in class, we're doing it now in the Visual Studio right now. So there's the Git ignores and things like that. And there's a secrets thing that's built that's really kind of robust inside the Visual Studio side that we use.
People are sending their API keys right up to GitHub.
So it's more than that though. Like, so with JavaScript, you need that. If you have an API key, then it's always on the front end. And so what you really need to do if you care about it is you need to implement a function on the back end, either a serverless function or a web API that proxies that for you. So that thing holds the key, that thing does the request, and then it forwards that request to your site. So you don't have that URL that has your key in the top and things like that.
Right.
So
that's interesting. That's very interesting. Anthony says, I'm finishing up a bootcamp. However, I look at job posts and there's so much stuff I don't know. You're not on your own, Anthony. We see this a lot. Docker, Kubernetes, ETL, crazy stuff. Do I need to learn that type of stuff to land a job?
So if you know 80% of what they're doing, then you need to apply there. If you know the languages that they're building in, then you need to apply if you're just graduating. So look for jobs that says 1 to 2 years experience required. That's the ones you need to focus on. If it says 5 to 10 years, then Docker may be required. You know, but that you're not getting that job anyway. So there is definitely a subset of things that you need to know. You got to realize that HR typically writes these things, and they just write down all the keywords in there. So like if you got 80% of it, specifically if it says ASP.NET and C#, Docker, Kubernetes, ETL, and you know ASP.NET and C# really well, apply. So the language is the thing that's the most important part of what they're doing. Or the stack.
I would say if you know the core stuff, and if you know kind of like, let's say it has 10 things and you know 5, I would say even go for it. As long as it's like the core things, right? Like if you know Docker and Kubernetes, but they're asking if it's a C# job and you know Java, you have less of a chance, I would say. There's like some core things they're looking for, and there's some like extra things. And it's kind of hard to figure out which ones are the extras and which ones.
And they don't rank those on the site. They just put them all on a bullet list, and they don't know like, that if you don't know Docker or how they use Docker, then they can show you.
Right.
It's not that difficult.
Right. It's like a nice to have them thing in a lot of situations.
So you need to learn to look at the job posts on LinkedIn and Indeed and try to really kind of hone your search down to something that's a match for you too.
There you go.
You don't need to learn Docker to get a job. You don't.
See this, Kyle says, I've just submitted my capstone for my degree in computer science. Congratulations, Kyle. And is about to graduate. Congratulations. So now what? I feel lost on what to do.
Your full-time job is finding a job. So now you need to find a recruiter, be great. Then you need to make sure that you have a portfolio that has that capstone project on it with everything else built out and published so you can show it to people. So you need to work on that in the near term. Then the second thing is start looking at job postings on LinkedIn and something like Indeed, and trying to really refine that search down to get jobs that you find jobs that match the skills that you have in your computer science degree. But the main thing is have something to show.
I think that's it, right? I think that's the thing. Having built the thing and saying you've built something, your capstone project, whatever it may be, it could be the greatest thing ever. But if you can't show it to somebody and you're just kind of abstractly explaining what you've done, you can have a way harder time. You need to be able to demo something, show them something. And that can be like, if you've built something on the web, obviously you can show them, you can have them go to it, they can play with it. If it's something that's not web-based, you need to think about, how can I demo it? What can I do? It could be a video, it could be screenshots, it's a whole bunch of different ways to kind of think about that. But you need to think about it from the employer's perspective, and how are you going to stand out to them? Like when you show your work, like can they look at it? Are they going to be impressed with your work? Even though you say, well, I've put like 4 years into this, and you feel like you've poured your heart and soul into the project. It's like you have it up on Git, and it's like, yes, that's awesome. Like, here's my GitHub link.
It's not good enough.
from them, it's from their perspective. They're like, they don't care how long you've put into it. They don't even care what it really is because they're never going to go clone it and figure it out and run the thing. They're just not going to. So you need to figure out a good way to market yourself. That's what you're thinking about. You're marketing yourself.
So build a portfolio, publish your projects live so people can look at them without downloading your code. Clean up all your GitHub READMEs, make sure that they look really good, and then go to market with the stuff that you have. Hope that helps, Kyle.
Cool. Okay. We're a little bit after, so let's go get tacos.
Let's do it, man. Thursday, Taco Thursday. So
we're not live on Tuesdays anymore. It's Taco Thursdays now.
Taco Thursday. We're gonna make a new Taco Thursday.
We'll just coin it that. Why not? Yeah, we'll be back again next Thursday, and we'll do another one.
All right, see you later, guys. Keep coding and don't give up, and get that job. See you later.
Everybody.